Hello, company. This is Captain Jarrell. I know we're doing a sharp annual refresher training all over again, but some events have made this necessary to do it again. Now, I want to reemphasize the fact that this training is to reemphasize the fact that sexual harassment is not a part of what we do in the Army or even what is allowed within our own sphere. Okay? So this training is again to reemphasize the fact that sharp sexual harassment is not okay within our company and will not be tolerated. On that note, we have our sharp representative, Staff Sergeant Prewit, and he'll be conducting the training. Thank you.
Good morning, 441-465. Welcome to the Army Annual Sexual Harassment, Assault, Response, and Prevention, also known as SHARP Refresher Training. We do not intend to re-victimize, initiate unwanted emotional responses, or inflict psychological stress on anyone. The nature of this content may be disturbing to some of you. This training contains elements that may be offensive or likely to induce high levels of emotional response or psychological stress in some participants. Attendees must choose not to participate in the discussion and can also step out of the classroom during the videos or exercise if they are uncomfortable with sexually suggestive content and language, but must step back in afterwards those activities are complete. Before we begin, let's watch the Why We Fight video. As you watch, think about what it means to be a member of the Army profession.
Here in America, we will have a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Regardless of whether you're male or female, it doesn't matter if you're gay or straight, it doesn't matter if you are black or white or Asian or Indian, or any other ethnic group. It doesn't matter what your country of origin is, or the spelling of your last name. It does not matter if you are Catholic or Protestant, Muslim or Jew, and it doesn't matter if you don't believe at all. It does not matter if you're rich or poor or common or famous. In this country, in these United States, under those colors of red, white, and blue, in this country, all Americans are created free and equal, and we will rise or fall based on our merit, and we'll be judged by the content of our character, not the color of our skin. That is the core organizing principle of the United States of America, and that is why we fight.
Okay. Sexual harassment and sexual assault are contrary to the Army values and the American ideals that we swear an oath to support and defend. So what are some of the key things from this video? And you can type your comments below. Okay. All right. Next question. So how do these things relate to our individual responsibilities as Army professionals, both soldier and Army civilian? Okay, good comment. Also a good comment too. All right. So next, though not mentioned specifically in the video, how do incidents of sexual harassment and sexual assault relate to our Army values and the ideals that we have committed to support and defend? Okay. That's a good response. I like that. All right. Okay. So as you see, sexual harassment and sexual assault are contrary to what we stand for. We all have a right to be free and protected from these harmful attitudes and behaviors. During this lesson, we will discuss the Army policy on prevention, sexual harassment, and sexual assault. We will illustrate some situations with videos, and we'll discuss the content to see how you apply the information into your workplace and other areas of your life. We will end this lesson with checks on learning questions to ensure the content was properly understood. Tell me what you already know about the SHARP program. Do we still have a problem with sexual harassment, sexual assault in the Army, and why? All right. Okay. I definitely agree. Mm-hmm. Okay. All good answers. So the answer is yes. And the statistics on the next two slides will demonstrate the Army still has a huge problem with sexual harassment and sexual assault. Despite years of effort, sexual assaults continue to occur within the military and civilian workforce. Why do you feel this is the case? And go ahead and type it in the comments again. All right. Okay. Good answer. All right. I'm liking these answers. So as you see on the slide, reports in fiscal 18 of 2018, there were 3,155 sexual assault reports involving a service member, whether as a victim or offender. There's a 14.2% increase from 2,706 sexual assault reports in the fiscal year of 2017. This includes the 2,576 unrestricted reports and 579 restricted reports. Sexual assault in the military occurs most often between junior enlisted acquaintances who are peers or near peers in rank. Military women indicate that offenders are most often military men whom they consider to be a friend or acquaintance, acting alone. In addition, the alleged offender's rank was most often the same as the victim's or one rank higher, with most alleged incidents involving junior enlisted women in the grades of E3 and E4. While men experience fewer sexual assaults than women, they endorse many of the same offenses experienced. However, men indicated a different combination of offenders with regard to sex. Just over half of men indicated their offender was male, 30% indicated their offender was female, and 13% indicated their offenders were a mix of men and women working together. Sexual harassment continues to occur in our Army. This data on this slide represents what has been reported. Many occurrences are resolved at the lowest level, requiring no complaints. The number of informal complaints that required investigation dropped sharply in fiscal years 16 and 17, indicating the commanders and SHARP professionals have been doing their due diligence to bring these numbers down. Notice that in the fiscal year 18 saw a spike in complaints. While it was unclear why there was a spike, one theory is that people feel more confident in the process and trust complaints will be handled professionally. Prevention requires a comprehensive approach. It takes everyone and it starts with you, as an individual doing your part. You are vital to the success and prevention approach by living the Army values, intervening early and often, and embodying the military and civilian creeds. Groups of peers, friends, and family take care of each other. This may be correcting behaviors for some individuals in a group that are contrary to our standards or provide support and protection for each other. Cohesive units and organizations ensure the well-being of all members and are vital to the mission's success. As stated in ADP 6-0, Mission Command, in a positive command climate, the expectation is that everyone lives by and upholds the moral principles of the Army ethic. The Army ethic must be supported, practiced, and respected. Leaders must set and uphold standards and implement practices to build teamwork and address behaviors that lead to sexual harassment and sexual assault. What you and others can do. So including proactive actions in your daily life, such as those listed on this slide, can help prevent sexual harassment and sexual assault. I ask you, what are other actions that you might take to prevent sexual harassment and sexual assault that are not mentioned on this slide? Okay. All right. comment. Okay, good comment. Here are some actions that you can take to prevent sexual harassment and sexual assault. So 2 key things. You have the right to say no, even if you first say yes and then change your mind. Previously was intimate with the person. Were kissing or making out. You can stop at any time. Other safety tips that you can use. Always have extra money to get home. Have a plan for someone to call if you need help. We all have heard that you should have a designated driver. Another prudent measure might be to have a designated thinker. If you feel uncomfortable, scared, or pressured, act quickly to end the situation. Say stop it and leave or call for help. Be aware of your surroundings at all times. Be aware and do not allow yourself to be isolated with a person you do not know or trust. Walk only in lighted areas after dark. Keep the doors to homes, barracks, and cars locked. Know where accessible and serviceable phones are located, or if you carry a cell phone, make sure it's always charged. Make note not to go down a road of victim blaming. Everyone has a right to go out and enjoy themselves. Barriers to intervention. There are barriers to intervene, but when recognized, these can be overcome through various ways. What are some of the barriers of intervention? I ask you all. Okay. Okay. All right. Rank can be a difficult barrier to overcome as the Army is clearly rank conscious. It may be very intimidating to intervene when dealing with someone who outranks you. It may take a high degree of personal courage to address or call out a senior service member. A good technique to be simple, pose a question to the senior service member to clarify if we should be behaving in the manner that the senior member just executed or is acting. This approach may allow them to acknowledge and identify themselves the way soldiers should behave and if they are living up to the Army standards. Fear of embarrassment or retaliation. It can cause to be an obstacle or cause us to intervene. Exhibiting personal courage to step in when perceived sexual assault or sexual assault infraction is about to occur demonstrates great character by the individual and that he or she does not tolerate sexual harassment or sexual assault and will look out for his or her Army teammates. In the long run, people will realize that he or she is an upstanding individual and will ultimately gain respect among their supervisors, peers, and coworkers. Much along the lines of rank, personality/communication differences can be a difficult barrier to overcome in the workplace. This is where living the Army values, specifically in a sense of duty, should prevail. Correcting a deficiency in a work environment is more significant than allowing personality communication differences to continue to persist. Simply put, overcoming barriers is a formidable task. However, the benefits of intervening are significantly outweigh the consequences of allowing detrimental behavior to continue. Bystander intervention, 3Ds. You are the change agent that can prevent an incident from intervening using the 3Ds. So what are the 3Ds? Direct, distract, and delegate. Direct. Address the perpetrator. Remove either party from the situation, hostile environment, potential victim or perpetrator. Have personal courage to intervene. Distract. Anything that distracts the perpetrator. Change the subject. Ask either the person to go do something or say, I think someone is coming. Delegate. Delegate the intervention to others. Have friends, squad, section members, of co-workers take either person out of the situation. Send someone for help to intervene. Chain of command, MPs, etc. See something, do something. Take action. So why is it important that we have a good working knowledge of bystander intervention process? Okay, good comment. All right, all right, okay, all right. So the bystander intervention process is a valuable tool if you have a good understanding of how and when to properly implement it. The 5 intervention steps are also as follows. Step 1, notice the event. Is the behavior appropriate? Is the behavior sexual harassment? Is it possible for an individual to harass someone and not realize it? Step 2, interpret the event as a problem. Is the observed event consistent with Army values? Does the event warrant intervention? Step 3, accept personal responsibility for doing something. How could my inaction impact my fellow soldiers' work climate? How does it impact mission accomplishment? Step 4, decide how to intervene. Evaluate the situation and determine the best course of action and the ideal person to intervene. Example given, is the situation safe to intervene, or rather soldier intervening be more effective? Utilize the 3Ds effectively. We will discuss the 3Ds in more detail in the next slide. Step 5, take action. Bottom line, do something to stop the negative behavior or the action. Before we go on, let's review the prevention questions in trifold.
So the trifold was not, and I apologize, it was not supplied with this. We'll go ahead and add a link right over here in the comment section. Just give me a second. You can continue, Staff Sergeant Prewit. Sorry.
All right, Roger. Sexual harassment, sexual assault. Impacts on readiness. A professional work environment promotes trust, contributes to the unit's readiness. Leaders must remain aware of warning signs and take action when necessary. Let's explore how sexual harassment and sexual assault directly affects the readiness of the Army. This slide demonstrates how incidents of sexual harassment and sexual assault degrade a unit's organizational readiness. The stair-step colored boxes show the decline in a unit's readiness, from green to red, which is common in all unit reports, briefings. The silhouette soldiers / civilians depict the available personnel in the unit. The dark silhouettes represent personnel that are ready and capable to execute the mission. The gray silhouettes depict soldiers or civilians that engage in and or are affected by sexual assault or harassment who may still present in the unit. However, their readiness and readiness of the unit is compromised due to several reasons including investigations, medical appointments, support meetings, and emotional effects of lack of trust, as they corpse respect. The transition of the silhouettes from black to gray demonstrates how these events degrade the unit's ability to complete its wartime mission. When observing early warning signs or more serious behaviors along the continuum, leaders must intervene early and often to maintain a professional work environment. Where do you see your current form unit on this slide? All right. Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. So now I'm going to go a little bit more in detail about the colorations of the boxes. The green box represents a professional work environment. Department of Defense, DoD, 2014-2016 Sexual Assault Prevention Strategy outlines the elements of a healthy environment as a unit climate that is based on mutual trust and respect, where leaders serve as the center of gravity for prevention, and both leaders and service members actively discourage sexist comments, sexual harassment, and sexual assault. These are what right looks like aspects of a unit. Let's discuss how these tenets make a unit healthy and how they create a positive environment in which an organization can operate to accomplish their mission. Engaged leadership, Army values, good order and discipline, dignity and respect, ethical standards, accountability, safe environment, warrior ethos, civilian creed. Once we recognize those behaviors are inappropriate, we need to be willing to intervene to correct the behavior. These signs can show a lack of discipline and professionalism in the unit. Leaders must maintain standards of conduct to ensure soldiers understand appropriate behavior. At any time, leaders observing early warning signs can intervene and help promote a healthy work environment. These are some possible early warning signs: excessive flirting, toxic atmosphere, inappropriate jokes, comments, disparaging comments on social media, inappropriate work relationship. If left unchecked, inappropriate behaviors can escalate and become more egregious. Moving towards the right, we can see how the behaviors in the yellow portion of the slide, when left unchecked or without correction, can create an environment where sexual harassment thrives. If these behaviors continue to occur, they can lead to more of the behaviors listed under sexual harassment and sexual assault. As previously stated, leaders can intervene when they recognize sexual harassment issues and move the unit back into the direction of a healthy work environment. Let's discuss the behaviors listed below, how they can be natural, progressive from the early warning signs previously mentioned. Sexting, chat calls, sexual innuendo, cornering, blocking, sexual-oriented cadence, unsolicited sexual explicit text or email. As a member of the Army team, individuals' interaction offline and online reflect on the Army and its values. Soldiers or civilians employees who participate in or condone misconduct, whether offline or online, may be subject to criminal, disciplinary, and or administrative actions. Contractor employee misconduct will be referred to the employee contractor through applicable contracting channels for appropriate action. Remember, these three things when you want to send a message or post something online. Think. Think about what the message is being communicated and who could potentially view it. Type. Messages that are consistent with the Army values. Post. Does the message demonstrates dignity and respect for self and others? You can reference this in RLAC 014-/2017. The orange box. The orange box on the slide contains behaviors that can border between sexual harassment and the criminal offenses of sexual assault. CID or law enforcement will determine if it is sexual assault. Sending unsolicited neck pictures, unsolicited kissing, bullying, and hazing. The red area on the right side of the graphic is an unhealthy environment that is sexual assault. The behaviors in this area are criminal offenses that CID or the appropriate MCI joint base will investigate. Let's talk about the behaviors listed from the top to bottom and how early warning signs and sexual harassment left unchecked or without correction can create an environment where sexual assault could occur. Mission readiness will be degraded due to loss of manpower, productivity, cohesiveness, and confidence in the leadership. Once this point has been reached, leadership engagement must occur. Leadership engagements can emphasize standards and trust to enforce the commander's intent to refocus the organization. As we progress through the training and pay attention to the definitions of the following illegal acts: rape, abusive sexual contact, aggravated sexual contact. The teal box at the bottom represents the notion that the leader engagements and intervention opportunities are present throughout the continuum. It is important to note that units are frequently wore throughout the continuum. If a unit finds itself in the yellow to the red zone or the continuum, they can reverse the downward movement by taking a swift and appropriate action. If leaders and soldiers engage and intervene when they recognize a negative behavior, the cycle may be interrupted or broken, and a unit can start moving towards the green box, which is mission ready unit. It is also important to remember that SARCs and VAs are the SMEs that are available to take all reports of sexual harassment and sexual assault. You must comprehend how the Army defines sexual assault. We've talked about the impacts of sexual harassment and sexual assault on individuals and units. Now let's look at the Army's definition of sexual harassment. Sexual harassment: conduct that involves unwelcome sexual advances requested for sexual favors and deliberate or repeated offenses, comments, or gestures of a sexual nature when submission to such conduct is made either explicitly or inexplicitly a term or condition of a person's job, pay, or career. Submission to or rejection of such conduct by a person is used as a basis for career or employment decisions affecting that person, or such conduct as the purpose or effect of unreasonable interfering with an individual's work, performance or creates an intimidating, hostile, or offensive environment, and is so severe or so persuasive that a reasonable person will perceive, and a victim does perceive, the environment as a hostile or offensive. 2. Any use of condemnation by any person in a supervisor or command position, or any form of sexual behavior to control, influence, or affect the career, pay, or job of a member of the armed forces or a civilian employee of the Department of Defense. 3. Any deliberate or repeated unwelcome verbal comment or gesture of a sexual nature by a member of the armed forces or civilian employee of the Department of Defense. The Army policy is that sexual harassment is unacceptable and will not be tolerated. Let's discuss the Army policy on sexual harassment. You should become familiar with this policy and be able to explain it. What does the Army policy mean for all of us? We'll take a couple of seconds. You can type your comments in the comment box. Okay. Okay. All right. Good responses. Let's move on to the next slide. Army policy applies 24/7, on and off post. The Army's policy on sexual harassment is built upon existing civil rights and has some important distinctions. Let's discuss these briefly now. It is important to remember that harassment based on sexual orientation is an EO issue, but sexual harassment is a sharp issue, regardless of orientation. Army civilians must comply with Army regulations regarding sexual harassment complaints. The SHARP program has not been replaced by the EO and EEO program. Army civilian sexual harassment response is still the responsibility of the EEO program. Army civilians complaints have the right to pursue administrative remedies through the EEO process. Army civilians are also encouraged to notify their commander or supervisor of sexual harassment concerns. Armed civilians complaints have the right to sue through the administrative process provided in 29 Code of Federal Regulations, CRF Part 1614. Complaints are encouraged to confront the subject offender also. However, supervisors and managers are responsible for confronting subject offenders once they know of the harassment. Civilians can get more information on sexual harassment from someone who works in EEO. Refer to AR 690-600, EEO discrimination complaints for additional information. DoD contractors should contact the EEO office or the Human Resource Department for assistance with sexual harassment complaints. There are two types of sexual harassment. AR 600-20 outlines two types of sexual harassment: quid pro quo and hostile environment. Let's take a moment to define these terms. We'll discuss the details of quid pro quo and hostile work environment on the next couple of slides. Quid pro quo, this for that, is unacceptable for soldiers and armed civilians. Quid pro quo is a Latin term meaning this for that. It refers to conditions placed on persons, career, or terms of employment in return for favors, including implied or explicit threats or adverse action if the person does not submit to such conditions, and or promises or favorable actions if the person does not submit to such conditions. Here are some examples of quid pro quo. So what are some other examples of quid pro quo of sexual harassment? And we'll take a few seconds. You can type your responses in the comment box. Okay. 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 All right. So quid pro quo sexual harassment may also have a harassing effect on third persons. They may result in allegations of sexual favoritism or general discrimination when a person feels unfairly deprived of recognition, advancement, or career opportunities because of the favoritism shown to another soldier or armed civilian on the basis of a sexual relationship. Hostile environments. Hostile environments are not beneficial to a professional workplace. Hostile environments occur when soldiers, family members, or armed civilians are subject to offensive, unwanted, and unsolicited comments or behaviors of a sexual nature. If these behaviors are unreasonably interfere with an individual's performance, regardless of whether the subject or offender and the complaint are in the same workplace, then the environment is classified as hostile. Categories of sexual harassment. You need to fully understand the three categories of sexual harassment in order to intervene when necessary. The categories of sexual harassment help us to identify potential sexual harassment behaviors. These behaviors are separated into three categories in AR 600-20: verbal, nonverbal, and physical contact. Let's take a moment to define each of these categories. Sexually explicit comments or sounds made aloud by individuals or overheard by others, or explicit behavior can create a hostile environment. So what are some of the examples of verbal sexual harassment? And you can go ahead and type your responses in the comment box. Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. Okay. Sexually suggestive actions or body movements made by individuals can create a hostile environment when observed by others. What are some examples of nonverbal sexual harassment? Okay. All right. Okay, so my next question is, what are some examples of sexual harassment through physical contact? Mm-hmm. Okay, I definitely agree. All right. So remember, intentional touching another person's penis, scrotum, anus, groin, breast, inner thighs, or buttocks without consent, if the intent is to abuse or humiliate another person or gratify the sexual desire of any person, is sexual contact and is classified as sexual assault. Accidental touching of some of these body parts would not be sexual assault. Touching someone to gratify or cause another person's sexual gratification is considered sexual assault, not sexual harassment. Reporting options. Soldiers have three options to resolve sexual harassment complaints. Now that we have learned to define and recognize sexual harassment, let's examine reporting options when you encounter these behaviors. Once sexual harassment behavior is identified, the behavior must stop. We will discuss some of these ways to make this happen through anonymous complaint, direct approach, third party, chain of command, file a formal complaint. Anonymous complaint. This approach encourages reporting of sexual harassment allegations or incidents, yet allows the individual reporting the sexual harassment to remain anonymous. Direct approach. This approach involves confronting the offender in person, email, or text, and informing the person that the behavior is not appreciated or not welcome and that it must stop. The following tips may make the direct approach more effective. Use common courtesy. Confront the individual privately if it's safe to do so. Focus on the behavior and its impact. Write down thoughts and specific examples before approaching the offender. Third party. This approach involves requesting assistance from another person. Ask someone else to talk to the offender, to accompany the complaint, and to intervene on behalf of the complaint to resolve the conflict. Considerations for the third-party approach include observations of the behavior should consider having a partner when addressing the offender. As a team, the two can inform the offender of the behavior and its impact. Chain of command. Report the behavior to your immediate supervisor or others in the chain of command and ask for assistance in resolving the situation. Your chain of command should discuss the two types of military complaints, formal and informal. So far, we discussed informal responses. Reporting to the chain of command may result in an investigation and inquiry. Informal military complaints include direct third party and chain of command. Previous mentioned techniques are not subject to the timeline, are not done in writing on an official document. Formal complaint. Formal complaints are subject to a timeline field using a DA form 7279 through the brigade level SARC or higher, and require specific actions such as a reprisal, plans, and notification. Soldiers have 60 calendar days from the date of the latest incident in which to file a formal complaint. A commander can request inquiry pursuant to an AR 15-6 to be conducted beyond the 60 calendar day window. In the Army National Guard for Title 32 status, the form used in the National Guard Bureau for Form 333 discrimination complaint in the Army and Air National Guard. The complainant should file his or her complaint with commander at the lowest echelon of command at which the complaint may be assessed of receiving a thorough, expeditious, and unbiased investigation on the allegations. Depending on the various aspects of the complaint, the individuals involved in the lowest level Commander may not be the immediate company or even battalion level commander on the complainant. Reporting options for civilians. An armed civilian opts to use an informal or potential consequences for sexual harassment. There are consequences for your actions. The Army policy on sexual harassment is built upon existing civil rights and EEO laws, but has some important distinctions. Let's discuss these briefly now. Policy applies on and off the installation 24 hours a day. Military complainants do not have the right to sue the subject or offender. Complainants are encouraged to confront subject offenders. However, supervisors, managers are responsible for promoting an environment free of sexual harassment. When necessary, leaders should confront subject offenders once they know of a sexual harassment incident. When necessary, leadership should confront subject/offenders once they know of the sexual harassment incident. Although a best practice is to advise the subject/offender that the comments or conduct is unwelcome, Army policy does not require complainants of sexual harassment to confront the subject/offender. Formal sexual harassment complaints are filed with the brigade at level SARC or higher. Soldiers have 60 calendar days from the date of the alleged incident in which to file a formal complaint. Commanders have the full range of administrative actions available to them to deal with offenders of the Army's sexual harassment policy. These ramifications hold true for soldiers sexually harassing other soldiers, armed civilians, or family members. Let's take a moment to review these actions as well as applicable UCMJ articles and punishments. Administrative punishments are available to commanders to deal with sexual harassment offenders include mandatory counseling by a member of the chain of command, presumably their company commander, administrative separation, bar to reenlist, adverse performance evaluation, and or specific comments concerning non-support of equal opportunity EO/EEO programs on evaluation reports, relief of cause, administrative reduction, abomination, reprimand, administrative withholding of privileges, rehabilitative transfer to another unit. If administrative actions fail to correct the behavior or the behavior is serious and constitutes a violation of the UCMJ, the commander may consider further action under the appropriate articles of UCMJ. Civilian consequences can range from administrative actions to termination. The table of penalties contains a suggested range of penalties. It is a guide to discipline, not a rigid standard. It is recommended that coordination with the local management employee relations office be done prior to taking any disciplinary actions. Let's now look at we don't have the truffaut, skip it. Definition of consent. Consent enables a safe, positive, interpersonal relationship. What is consent, I ask you all? Okay. All right, I'm seeing some of the same responses. Okay. All right. This slide displays the definition of consent from 2019 version of the manual for court martials. Lack of consent may be inferred based on the circumstances of the offense. All surrounding circumstances are to be considered in determining whether a person gave consent or whether a person did not resist or cease to resist only because of another person's actions. Alcohol and consent talking points. Sexual acts / contact with a person when you know or reasonably should have known that the person is incapable of consenting due to impairment by a drug or intoxication is a crime. The UCMJ provides that a person is incapable of consenting when they are incapable of appraising the nature of the conduct, physical, incapable of declining participation, or communicating unwillingness to engage in sexual conduct. There is no specific amount of alcohol that renders a person incapable of consenting under the law. It is incorrect to say that a person who has consumed any alcohol is incapable of consenting. It is incorrect to say that a person with a certain blood alcohol content level is incapable of consenting. Every report of sexual harassment involves alcohol, and the ability to consent will depend on the unique facts and circumstances of the case. There is no bright line rule here. A bright line rule or bright line test is a clearly defined rule or standard composed of objective factors which leave little or no room for varying interpretation. The purpose of a bright line rule is to produce a predictable and consistent result in its application. Providing inaccurate information on alcohol and consent at training has real consequences, including overturning of sexual assault convictions, the disqualifications of panel members who have attended training where inaccurate information was provided, and promoting false beliefs in soldiers who attend training that they have committed, witnessed, or been the victim of a sexual assault. Training should provide the legal standard and capable of consenting, and should focus on both the risks of sexual conduct with an intoxicated person and the benefits of healthy and consensual sexual interactions based on mutual consent. What is sexual assault? Sexual assault is a crime that degrades the unit's mission readiness and destroys the element of mutual trust throughout the organization. The Army policy states that sexual assault is a crime, as a criminal offense, unacceptable, and will not be tolerated. Now that we define sexual assault, let's take a look at the Army's policy on sexual assault. The Army's sexual assault policy applies without regard to a person's rank, age, or gender. Sexual assault are criminal offense and will not be tolerated in our Army. While AR 600-20 states that every soldier should immediately report of sexual assault, only members of the chain of command have mandatory reporting. Responsibilities on the DoD 649.02 and AR 600-20. In situations that a victim confides in a battle buddy or family member, these individuals are not required to report. If the victim intends to file a restricted report, however, a victim's leadership, chain of command, or NCO support channel are always required to report regardless of the victim's wishes. The resulting report will be unrestricted. The Army will treat every reported sexual assault seriously by following proper guidelines. The information and circumstances of the allegations will be disclosed on a need-to-know basis only. This policy applies both and off-post during duty hours and non-duty hours. At working, living, and recreation environments, it includes both on and off-post housing. Restricted versus unrestricted reporting. It is important to understand that the benefits and limitations of restricted and unrestricted reporting options. Next, let's review ways to report sexual assault crimes. As most of you know, there are two reporting options for victims of sexual assault. However, there are differences to these options based on law, policy, and guidance. Restricted reporting. Restricted reporting allows soldiers or his or her family member, dependents 18 years of age or older, and who are ineligible for treatment in the military healthcare system, who is a sexual assault victim, to confidentially disclose details of his or her sexual assault to specifically personnel without triggering investigative process. Restricted reporting also allows a victim medical treatment, counseling, and the right to consult with a special victim counsel and advocacy services. In addition, with sexual assault, can be reported to the Sexual Assault Response Coordinator, the SARC, a victim advocate, or to a healthcare professional. Victims of sexual assault which are perpetrated by a domestic partner or someone with whom the victim shares a child falls within the family advocacy program. Victims who receive counseling associated with sexual assault are not required to report those counseling sessions on the SF-86 questionnaire for national security positions. With regard to restricted reports, the sexual assault forensic examiner kit will be retained for 10 years in a location designated by the Army. Unrestricted reporting. Unrestricted reporting allows a victim who desires medical treatment, counseling, and advocacy services and an official investigation of the sexual assault to use current reporting channels. For example, the chain of command or law enforcement, or to report the incident to a sexual assault response coordinator, victim advocate, or healthcare personnel. Filing an unrestricted report will initiate an official investigation. Details of the sexual assault are limited to personnel with legitimate need to know. Both restricted and unrestricted reports. The SARC will retain the victim reporting preference statement for 50 years from the date the victim signed the DD Form 2910, DD Form 2911. DoD safe report shall be retained for 50 years in accordance with DoD 5505-18. Restricted reports are filed locally, and unrestricted reports are re-entered into the Defense Sexual Assault Incident Database, where it will be retained for the 50-year period. Next, let's review ways to report sexual assault crimes. As most of you know, two reporting options for victims of sexual assault. However, there are differences to these options based off law, policy, and guidance. Restricted reporting. Restricted reporting allows soldier or his or her family member I apologize, sir. I was on the same slide. All right. There are differences in who can accept reports of sexual assault as it relates to restricted and unrestricted reports. If someone in the NCO support chain or officer chain of command knows of a sexual assault prior to the victim making a report, the option for restricted report is no longer available. To make a restricted report, the victim must notify one of the following personnel and only these personnel: Sexual Assault Response Coordinator, Victim Advocate, Healthcare personnel. A special victim counsel will also be provided to soldiers and their family members. DoD civilians stationed in Oconus are also generally eligible for special victim counsel services. The following individuals are eligible to file restricted reports: active duty military personnel for armed forces, Reserve and National Guard performing federal duty, soldiers and family members, 18 years of age or older are eligible for treatment in the military healthcare system and are victims of sexual assault. A victim may convert a restricted report to an unrestricted report at any time. Once a soldier signs a DD Form 2910 with the SARC or VA and elects a restricted report, only that victim may change it to an unrestricted report. For example, a soldier reports a sexual assault to the VA on Monday morning, a restricted report, and signs a DD Form 2910. The commander is informed of a sexual assault from someone other than the SARC, and he or she notifies CID. If CID contacts the SARC or VA, the report is still restricted, and the SARC cannot divulge any information that would violate the victim advocacy privilege established by Military Rule of Evidence, MRE 514. CID will, however, continue to investigate the report. While the service member and are exempted from mandatory reporting in accordance with NDAA 2016, Army civilians are not exempt from mandatory reporting. If the victim first responds to a civilian facility or a civilian authority, it is possible that the jurisdiction may require mandatory reporting of the sexual assault to local law enforcement. Army civilian sexual assault reporting resources. There are different resources available for Army civilians. Depending on your context, it is important to note that civilians only have option to file restricted. Potential consequences for sexual assault. Here are the applicable UCMJ articles and potential punishment for sexual assault. Sexual assault includes a broad category of sexual offenses consistent with the following specific UCMJ offenses: rape, sexual assault, aggravated sexual contact, abusive sexual contact, or attempts to commit these offenses. Soldiers can be prosecuted under the host nation laws if requested by the host nation if they're overseas. Let's now look at next slide. Military Rule of Evidence, MRE 514. Communication with a SARC/VA is confidential. MRE 514 was implemented as an effort to improve the military's overall effectiveness in addressing the crime of sexual assault, facilitating openness between victims and victim advocates, and mitigating the impact of the court-martial process on victims. The MRE 514 specifically emerged in response to concerns raised by members of Congress, community groups, and the Defense Task Force on Sexual Assault in the Military Services. While confidentiality is important to maintain throughout the filing process, there are some expectations on MRE 514 in case where confidential information must be shared. Let's discuss some of the expectations to confidentiality in the case of raising restricted reporting. Expectations of restricted reports of sexual assault that may warrant a break in privileged communications. In cases where victims elect restricted reporting, the probation on disclosing covered communications on the following persons or entities, as indicated, will be suspended for the following reasons: to command officials, law enforcement, or others when disclosure is authorized by the victim in writing, when disclosure is necessary to prevent or lessen a serious or immediate threat to the health or safety of a victim or other person, to the disability retirement boards and officials when disclosure by a healthcare professional is required for fitness for duty or disability determinations. The information necessary to process duty and disability determinations. To the SART, VA, or healthcare provider when disclosure is required for the supervision and or coordination of direct victim treatment or services. When disclosure is ordered to by military, federal, or judge, or other officials or entities are required by federal or state statute or applicable U.S. international agreements. Often the chain of command will learn about any alleged rape or sexual assault from someone other than the SART, Criminal Investigation Division, CID, or the victim. Let's discuss the impact of the victim's ability to file a restricted report in these circumstances. Expedited transfer requests. Soldiers can request an expedited transfer in filing an unrestricted report. Often victims of sexual assault find returning to their work areas a challenge after reporting a sexual assault, particularly when the alleged offender in the same unit or has regular contact with the victim's unit. Other victims feel isolated, being so far away from their support system. So returning to an installation near their families or friends would be the only way they can start the healing process. There are many ways a victim of sexual assault can start the healing process as a journey from victim to survivor. An expedited transfer or reassignment is one of them. Sexual assault victims who file an unrestricted report can request an expedited transfer reassignment from their current unit to another unit at a different geographical location, a different unit on the installation, another company where the same battalion, another battalion within the same brigade, or to another brigade within the same division. The request must be submitted in writing using DA Form 4187. The transfer reassignment may be temporary or permanent. All requests of permanent change of station must be sent to the commander, U.S. Army Human Resources Command for approval or disapproval. The Army has established procedures for requesting an expedited transfer reassignment outlined in AR 614-200, Enlisted Assignments and Utilization Management, DTD 25, January 2019. Army policy for expedited transfer requires a presumption in favor of transferring or reassigning a sexual assault victim at his or her request, following a victim's credible report of sexual assault. Commanders and civilians shall consider requests for transfer or reassignment in an expedited manner. This policy applies to all soldiers who report being the victim of a sexual assault and sexual offenses. Requests for transfer must be in writing. If a commander cannot approve a request at his or her level, or if command and the victim's request will be forwarded through the chain of command to the appropriate approving authority. Each commander in the chain of command through which the request is submitted will provide his or her written recommendation to the approving authority. Requests for permanent change of station transfers must be forwarded to you for the U.S. Army HRC. A commander recommending disapproval of a request shall provide the reasons for the recommendation in writing. A victim's transfer request must be disapproved only by the first general officer in the victim's chain of command, who may delegate disapproval authority to other general officer within the command, or to a member of the senior executive services. Command has 72 hours to obtain the first general officer's signature on the request, unless the subordinate commander had approval authority and approved the request. When a victim requests reassignment to another installation, or reassignment to another Army command on the same installation, the authority to approve or disapprove the request is reserved to the commander, U.S. Army HRC. The commander shall make a credible report termination at the time the request is made after considering the advice of the supporting judge, advocate, or legal advisor concerned and available evidence. Only reports that are determined credible will be forwarded to the approval, disapproval authorities for reassessment considerations. Only the first general officer in the victim's chain of command and disapprove a victim's request, and he or she may delegate the authority to another general officer in the chain of command or a member of the senior executive service. Military protective orders. A military protective order is a tool the commanders can use to protect soldiers. In unrestricted reporting cases, commanders will execute the following procedures regarding military protective orders. A military protective order is a short-term order issued by a unit commander against an active duty service member under his or her command. Protective orders can be issued verbally or in writing. The orders may mostly commonly in writing on a DD Form 2873. The MPO is intended to safeguard victims, quell disturbances, maintain good order and discipline, while victims have time to pursue protection orders through civilian courts. It's important to know once an MPO is finalized and been issued under the advisement of the brigade, commanders must submit a copy of the MPO to the local provost marshal's office. The provost marshal's office will upload the MPO into the National Crime Information Center, the NCIC. In the event of a sexual incident occurring off the installation, civilian law enforcement will be aware of the MPO and may not be able to take action based solely on the MPO. MPOs are not enforceable by civilian authorities off post. The victims desiring protection off post should seek a CPO, civilian protective order. Off-base violations of the MPO should be reported to the issuing commander, DoD law enforcement, and CID investigation. Definition of retaliation. No soldier may retaliate against a victim, alleged victim, or another member of the armed forces based on the individual's report of a criminal offense. A soldier who wrongfully takes or threatens to take an adverse personnel action against any person or who withholds or threatens to withhold a favorable personnel action against any person or reporting or planning to report a criminal offense or making or planning to make a protected communication is guilty of retaliation. The term protected communication means the following: a lawful communication to a member of Congress or Inspector General, a communication to a covered individual or organization in which a member of the armed forces complains of or discloses information that the member reasonably believes and constitutes evidence of any of the following: a violation of law or regulation, including a law or regulation prohibiting sexual harassment or unlawful discrimination. Gross mismanagement is a gross waste of funds, an abuse of authority, or a substantial or specific danger to public health or safety. Personnel action is defined as action taken against a member of the armed forces that affects or has the potential to affect the member's current position or career. Such actions include a promotion, a disciplinary or other corrective action, a transfer or reassignment, a performance evaluation, and a decision to pay benefits afterwards, or awards or training, referral to mental health evaluations, and other significant change in duties or responsibilities inconsistent with the member's grade. Victims' rights. When a soldier has been a victim of sexual assault and is separated from the service within 1 year of final disposition of his or her sexual assault case, it is Army policy and DoD policy, Sexual Assault Prevention and Response Program procedures, to conduct a general officer review of the facts to ensure that the separation is not retaliation. If time permits, promote healthy training amongst your unit with regulation regulation DoD 6495.02. Elements of retaliation. Per Army Directives 2014-20, retaliation also includes an act of cruelty, oppression, or maltreatment committed against a victim, an alleged victim, or another member of the armed forces. These allegations of retaliation should be referred to a battalion or higher commander and investigated by CID and the installation law enforcement as well as the unit commander. If you feel that you are being retaliated against, immediately contact your SARC or your VA. No soldier may retaliate against a victim, an alleged victim, or another member of the armed forces based on the individual's report of a criminal offense. Allegations of retaliation should be referred to a battalion or higher commander investigated by CID and installation law enforcement as well as the unit commander. In accordance with Army Directives 2015-16, allegations of retaliation against the victim, a witness, interviewer, SARC's VAs, or first responders should be referred to a battalion or higher commander to develop a plan to immediately address the issue and forward the plan to the SARB chair. In accordance with DoD 6495.02, service members may request a review from a general or flag officer if they experience retaliation, reprisal, restriction, or maltreatment involving administrative separation within 1 year of the final disposition of their sexual assault case. In accordance with 6495.02, sexual assault victims have the right to communicate with a G/FO if they believe there were impacts to their military career because they reported a sexual assault. We're now going to take you through a visualization exercise. Call to action. Do your part to keep each other and our Army safe. In this lesson, we describe the impact of sexual harassment and sexual assault on the Army, discuss prevention practice and the bystander intervention process, discuss sexual harassment, discuss sexual assault, discuss sexual victims' rights, confidentiality, expedited transfer, protective orders, respective victims counsel, define the Army's policy on retaliation. Think back to the beginning of this lesson. Now that we cover all material, you do understand how important maintaining a professional environment free of sexual harassment and sexual assault is to conducting training and operations. Our units cannot completely ready to train and achieve mission success if we are adversely impacted by incidents of sexual harassment or sexual assault. This is a list of some resources available to victims of sexual assault and sexual harassment. Although this is not an extensive list, it provides excellent starting points. It is also helpful for general information purposes. Add provision for local organization and instructor notes if the instructor knows the status of the MOU. And this concludes our Army Sharp presentation. I now defer to Captain to roll.
All right, everyone. So we still have a couple minutes left. What we're going to do is we're going to keep the live feed up, so that way anyone can finish up any questions or comments. Big thing that I want to reiterate is the fact that this does not happen in our company. Okay? We will treat everybody with respect and everybody with dignity. All right? We take care of each other because that's what we do, and that's how we get to a point of success. All right? We need to grow, and we actually need to care about each other. But anyway, like I said, we're gonna keep this video going just a little bit longer. You guys can go ahead and keep commenting. If nothing else, I'll see you guys all at the next training. Okay? Thank you.